Hi. Okay, third article. It's called Witness the Guerrilla Theater of Greenpeace, Radical Street Performance in International Anthology. It's interesting to me. I don't know why I always go to race politics. I'm not sure. But it just is in my head a lot. Okay, so Greenpeace would do these really theatrical events or happenings or interventions where they would they make like commercials and stuff, and the one they talk about a lot in this is that they tried to put a banner across Mount Rushmore. And they would get boats and try to stop directly with like big banners on these boats to stop like whaling and different things like that. So and it is theater, like in the theater of the oppressed sense of the word theater, where they're using these sort of theatrical methods to get their point across, a political point across. They wanted to stop nuclear testing, and they wanted to stop whaling. I think that was like their main stuff, and like pollution and stuff. And they called out the EPA, and they would do happenings or interventions like clogging up if toxic sewage or whatever was coming out of a plant, they would clog it and stuff like that. And so it was sort of like this sort of liminal space. Like sometimes it was sort of an artistic intervention, and sometimes it was directly political and didn't necessarily have an aesthetic, but definitely had politics. So it's interesting. The thing that struck me was how acceptable they are to the establishment to a certain extent. Like Reagan wasn't a fan. He called them like little assholes or something like that. But I think it might be because they tend to be white privileged kids that do this kind of work. Like the environment, like it's a really common criticism of environmentalists and environmental activists that they tend to separate social issues from environmental issues. So like they don't look at the social justice angle a lot of the time, or class angles, like I don't know, like the seal hunt. Everyone's really mad because Canada's getting called out on the seal hunt, when the criticism is that it's a very classist thing to go after these really poor people who just, like there's no more fishing in Newfoundland, and so they can do this to get money, even though it is heavily, heavily subsidized by the government. Like, you know what I mean? These things are very complicated. And so just to be like, I'm saving the environment for the future children, and not really looking at the social conditions that allow these things and it's to happen, or the more political side of things, like sometimes their politics aren't so good. Anyway, it's just something I just feel like if it was a big group of like people of color clogging drain pipes and fucking with national monuments, they wouldn't be getting like minor fines and having prosecutors like walking out of cases and joining. You know what I mean? I don't know. Do you think, am I just like, maybe I don't know. I always kind of think about those things. But I'm not saying that the work they're doing is not important. I think it is important. And they are an effective group. Like they stopped whaling by like 80% or something like that after they came into being. And they do call the EPA out. I don't know if we have an EPA in Canada. We probably have something like it. But the EPA in the United States is by and large a tool of the corporations that are polluting. So it's sort of like, what are you here for exactly, EPA, if you're not protecting us? Like, so you're protecting them? I don't think they need your help. I think they're protecting themselves quite well. It was interesting that they are a really effective group. They seem really acceptable to me, which makes me sort of like question how their politics work. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's the first thing I think, like, if everyone's accepting of it, like, oh, Greenpeace is great, and it's not making people uncomfortable or angry, I sometimes feel like that's usually a good sign that something's kind of fucked up. I don't know, it's just the state of things as they stand right now. But I do think it's important work, and like the people who suffer ultimately from environmental destruction usually are really poor people, right? So I don't know, but I think they do good events, happenings and interventions, and they're really effective, and they catch the news and stuff. So what they're doing is effective at the very least. Okay, that's enough about that. Okay, fourth and final from this week, or last week, was from Xenophobia and the Indexical Present 2. It was a lecture in Radical Street Performance, an international anthology. Is Adrian Piper wrote it. This was really good. This article, she talks about Kant, whatever, a little bit, and how he's basically saying that people make stereotypes and generalities in order to understand the world better, and that when those things break down, it kind of freaks them out, and it sort of means that the world doesn't make sense anymore, and that kind of thing. So it is sort of, to a certain extent, letting people off the hook a little bit. Like, if you were raised in an area where there was never any white people and you saw a white person, you'd be just like, what are you? I remember my friend, when I was growing up, Jenny, she came from this sort of, like, small town in China, and then she went to Hong Kong, and she saw a white person, and she was just like, I thought he looked like an animal. Like, he just looked really crazy to her, and it's sort of understandable. She lives here now, and, like, she got over it, but, and I guess it's, like, I feel really weird when I'm in a place like small towns and stuff like that. I just feel really uncomfortable because I'm not used to small towns and, like, I guess, like, unpopulated suburbs kind of places, or places where there's nobody but white people. It kind of freaks me out. Like, I feel like something's wrong. So, like, I think I can understand what she's saying, or the point that she was bringing up in terms of those stereotypes. But anyway, she's she was trained in minimal art, and she has, like, a PhD in philosophy or something. But she was doing performance art pieces. One of them was, like, where she was on a bus with her mouth stuffed with a towel and just sitting there. Like, her thing was, like, a very sort of liminal thing where she was definitely subverting the norm of, like, acceptable behavior, or acceptable, I think mostly acceptable physical presence, like who you're allowed to be in certain places, especially in public, how you're allowed to look, how you're allowed to behave. But she never really, like, she wasn't touching people or being aggressive. Like, people could interact with her or not. And in her work, like, where she was just made all her clothes wet with oil, and then just, like, walked around, like, a public place. She did a good one where I guess she like, a lot of times people don't know that she's black, and then so she was sort of passing, and then her white friends would, like, make racist remarks in front of her, thinking that she was white and wouldn't care, and then her, like, tension and feeling that she didn't want to, like, interrupt the dinner party or make it, because inevitably when you call somebody out on being racist, or saying a racist thing or doing a racist thing, it doesn't really go well, which sucks for everybody, right? So she made these little cards, like, I don't know if you know, but I'm black, and your racism is hurting my feelings, and I'm not trying to call you out and hurt your feelings, which is why I'm giving you this little card. And it was really interesting. She got the idea from this, I guess, this lady in the 30s who used to make lots of swimming movies. Do you remember those movies that look like tiered layer cakes and swimming in fountains? Do you remember that? And she had, like, a swimming cap on that was cool and covered in flowers. I vaguely remember those from growing up. Anyway, and that people would just ask her the same question over and over, so she'd just give them the card, like, yes, I still swim. Yes, I still swim. I feel like that in retail a lot. When I used to work retail, people ask the same 2 or 3 questions, depending on where you work, all the time, and you're just like, nah, and you just become a robot about it. This is an aside. However, I think that her work was really interesting. She dressed up like a black man, and went to, like, the opera and did things like that. So she was subverting the space, like, like she mentioned in her article, like, Michael Fried was, like, she was activating the space, so she was working with the space that was there. She was activating it, but she wasn't it wasn't, like, a violent action. It was just, like, a subversion almost, which was almost more powerful to me, that it was, what she was doing was subversive. That her dressing like a black man and doing these things was subversive. Like, her going to clubs and handing out cards like, I just want to be left alone, I just like the music, or something like that, and just handing out cards was subversive when it seems like it shouldn't be. I thought it was really interesting. So that's it for this week. Bye bye!